You are listening to the Mark Guzman Podcast Experience. Perfect. So I want to thank my guest today, Lanny Clark with Prime Lending, for coming in. And this is really exciting because this is literally the very first recording I'm doing for the podcast, very first interview episode. And for those of you that are going to follow, you can watch this on YouTube. You could also follow on Podbean, Podmatic, iTunes, SoundCloud, all those great websites. Thank you for coming in. And basically, just very briefly, I want to go over the premise of this podcast and how it's going to flow. We're basically going to, I'll be interviewing a few guests, and we will be tasting either wine or beer on the show. And right now, we are getting a bottle open right now, and special bottle that I got, Game of Thrones bottle, Cabernet. I know you're a big Game of Thrones fan.
Well, yes, I am. I think this season is great. And last episode was incredible.
I have to admit that I don't watch Game of Thrones, but my girlfriend Kim loves it, and I did watch the season premiere of this last season, and I guess it was actually pretty good. I really enjoyed it. She's trying to convince me to watch the second episode, which just came out, I guess a couple nights ago, and then she's trying to get me to watch everything from season one. So I might end up becoming a Game of Thrones fan.
If you watch him, you will be a fan. It's a great show.
Yeah. So, need help over there? Got it. Okay, perfect. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself a bit more? Give us a little background on who you work with, your company, how long you've been in business, and we'll kind of go from there.
Okay. Well, my name is Lanny Clark. My given name is Lance, but all my friends call me Lanny. I grew up in the local area. Came from Albany High, graduated in 1981, where I was on the wrestling team, and I did judo through college, and then at a certain point, when I didn't make the Olympic team in '92, I decided I had to get a real job. So I got into real estate. My first professional license was as an appraiser. So I actually started working in San Francisco as an appraiser at one of the largest firms. We had 23 appraisers at the time, and I was pretty much given the South Bay. As a new guy, I had to drive the furthest.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed it. Then they changed some of the regulations. They passed what was called a de minimis law, which allowed banks not have to use appraisers if they were loaning their own money. So half the business disappeared overnight. One of my clients said, "Well, you already do all the appraisals. You know how to work with the bank. Why don't you get a real estate license and come do loans with me in sales?" And so I got my first real estate license. I think it was 1994. By the time I finished passed all my exams and everything else, and went on in '99, got a broker's license. So I've owned or operated 5 or 6 different real estate companies. At one point, I had the third largest firm in Solano County with Home Traditions. We had 5 offices and 140 agents.
Wow.
So that was quite an experience back in the day. But I've always been more of a passion of being a lender. And so I started off at a small
So
shop.
that's something I didn't know. You actually did real estate before you got into lending.
Yes. Well, my original broker actually had both. So I learned to do both, but I was just gravitated more towards the lending side of it. But I have done a lot of sales, which is what gives me an advantage over a lot of lenders. A lot of them haven't actually done a lot of sales or managed a lot of sales. So I definitely understand the realtor's perspective on things. Put someone in your car every weekend and driving them around and showing them all the houses. And
Yep.
then they want to show, of course, they want to see houses they can't afford. You got to try to tell them no. But yeah, so then from there, I went to work at an actual mortgage bank at one point, Wausau Mortgage, and I stayed there for about 6 years. And then they were sold, and they actually went out independently on my broker's license for a number of years. And then I've been with only 2 other banks since then. Right, currently I'm with Prime Lending. We're part of Plains Capital out of Texas. We're a federal savings bank, and we currently were ranked 6th in the nation on volume. We did over 15 billion last year. And it's kind of a neat situation because most small lenders have to go to third party to borrow the money, a warehouse line system. Then they have to sell the loans off to replenish. Well, we borrow the money from our own bank, who borrows it directly from the Fed. So sort of cuts the middleman out of a lot of things and allows us to have more creativity in a lot of products we do and services we do. And also being a federal lender, we're licensed in all 50 states, so I can do loans in all 50 states.
Now, it seems to me like a lot of loan officers will switch from one company to the next, and they do that quite often. Are there specific reasons why? Is it better loan programs? Is it, I mean, that's one thing I've never really understood.
Yeah, the lending game, because most people don't have their own money like we do, different companies will hook up with a certain investor, so they'll get a little niche, and someone will decide they want to go with that niche and whatever it happens to be, the hot product of the day.
Hmm.
Sort of like a car salesman may go to the dealership that has the hottest car on the market that year.
Okay.
Um, but one of the other things is different mortgage companies run different ways. They have different commission structures, and some provide leads. Of course, if they provide you leads, you typically make less money. But anytime someone can be a self-generating loan officer, they can pretty much pick and choose where they want to go. But we did notice those that hop a lot. Typically, it's because they're not always successful. The ones that stick around 3, 5, 7 years per company tend to be more stable, tend to be a little bit stronger in their customer service and how they treat the clients and what they do.
Yeah. Now, a very interesting fact is you're a black belt in uh, various martial arts, judo, and Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, right?
Well, Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, I have no official rank, but I do work out. I've been with Caesar Gracie for a number of years now, and Caesar recognizes me as my black belt, allows me to wear it on the mat, and they treat me as a black belt. So I would consider it more of an honorary rank, but no, I didn't earn my stripes the way a lot of people did. But
Okay.
I come in because Brazilian Jiu Jitsu actually evolved from judo.
Thank you for listening to this podcast short. For more podcast content, be sure to subscribe to all of our podcast channels on YouTube, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Libsyn, Castbox, Podbean, and literally anywhere else you listen to podcasts.